uh, Dr. Elliot Doso, who is going to talk about accelerating land restoration in lowland-based system in Africa. So Elliot is going to talk for 15 minutes, and then you all have the chance then to ask him questions. Elliot is a young scientist from AfricaRice. He, he has published a lot in climate science, and he has won a prestigious award. One of them is Norman Borlaug Young Scientist, and also he just won the Japan Young Scientist. So he is going to talk about his passions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aliu. Good morning, everyone. Before I start, I would really like to thank the high-level management of AfricaRice, represented here by Dr. Aliu Diagne, our Director of Research and Innovation, for having actually made the travel from Cote d'Ivoire to here, showing actually how important the topic of land restoration in lowland-based system is for the high-level management of AfricaRice. So I'll make a 15-minute presentation. Can I start?
Okay, I need to see.
Thank you very much. So I'll make a very short presentation on, it's not appearing, eh? Okay, on accelerating land restoration in lowland-based system in Africa. The presentation will flow this out now. I will talk about the importance of lowland, the current state of lowland degradation in Africa, the impact of lowland degradation, proven practices for lowland restoration in Africa, key challenges to accelerate African lowland restoration, and I will end with a roadmap for accelerating lowland restoration in Africa and conclusion. Lowland are defined as flat or gently sloping areas, and they are found in valley, in floodplain, in wetlands. They are characterized by seasonally or permanently waterlogged soils. They are very much important for crop production, particularly rice production, and then they play a critical role in achieving food security and rural livelihoods. They also provide important ecosystem services, particularly flood regulation, water storage, groundwater recharge, water quality improvement. They provide habitat for diverse flora and fauna, and they also play an important role for carbon sequestration. Lowland are widespread in Africa with an estimated 350 million hectares, including 100 million hectares of inland valleys and 100 million hectares of wetlands. However, land degradation is a major issue in Africa's lowlands. About 25% of the lowland in Africa are degraded, with an estimated rate of 0.5 to 1.5% annual rate of degradation. The major drivers for lowland degradation in Africa include deforestation, unsustainable farming practices, particularly the use of chemical products like herbicides and fertilizer, salinity, overgrazing, urbanization, climate change, particularly the increase in temperature that contribute to drying up the lowlands. The impact of lowland degradation are large. Rice yield, for instance, in degraded area have decreased by up to 40%. The suitability of lowlands have been projected to decrease by 22 to 50%. There have been a lot of loss in terms of biodiversity ecosystem services due to the degradation of lowlands. About 250 million people are affected with an estimated annual loss of 9 billion US dollars. Food security and poverty also have been largely affected. And among those people who are mostly affected, rural population and marginalized groups, particularly women and youths, are severely affected by lowland degradation. There is an urgent need to restore lowland, particularly for ecosystem services preservation, but also for environmental resilience. This is also urgent for food security, given that 64% of rice, for instance, in Africa is produced in lowland, contributing to 78% of the production. Rice has become a major source of calorie and its consumption is rapidly growing in Africa. Therefore, there is a need definitely to accelerate the restoration of lowland in Africa in view of the importance in terms of food security, rice production, and other crop production, but also in view of the important ecosystem services and biodiversity that they contribute to preserve. CGIAR, including AfricaRice and other CGIAR partners, and the national partners have actually contributed to the development of innovation that help to preserve lowlands, the ecosystem services that they provide as well, while contributing to food security. In terms of the proven practices for accelerating lowland restoration, AfricaRice and its partners have developed an approach that helps to map lowland and the suitability for rice cultivation. This is an important input if you want to preserve lowland, because that approach helps to identify the lowland that are suitable for rice cultivation, and also the lowland that are not suitable that can be used for biodiversity and ecosystem services preservation. And that approach is basically based on 6 steps that are listed there, combining both the use of GIS, remote sensing, and ecological niche modeling. So the output of that approach that we developed for countries like Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Benin, Togo, Mali, is finally the map of lowlands and also the suitability for crop production and also for biodiversity and ecosystem services preservation, which is very important. Another innovation that has been developed by AfricaRice and the partners in the Smart Valleys approach. This approach has been adopted by more than 50,000 farmers in 10 West and Central African countries. It's actually a low-cost and participatory approach for improving water control in lowland, and actually based on the use of indigenous knowledge to construct irrigation and drainage canal, to level the fields, to construct ponds, and to improve water control in the lowlands. What is very interesting is that this approach requires only $700 against the traditional approach, which requires about $5,000 per hectare. And the adoption of this approach by farmers have contributed to increase rice yield by 2.3 tons per hectare. It has also contributed to integrating off-season crops during the dry season, and has contributed to increase farmers' income by $687 per hectare. Something that is also important with the Smart Valleys approach is that it contributes to enhance the provisioning and regulating ecosystem services provided by lowland, particularly in terms of drought and flood regulation, but also in terms of soil erosion control. Another approach related to lowland restoration is integrated rice fish. Integrated rice fish is now adopted by more than 100,000 farmers in Cote d'Ivoire, Madagascar, Nigeria, Ghana, and Mali. It actually consisted in co-cultivation of rice and fish in the same fields. What is very interesting is that the integrated rice fish contribute to increased fish growth compared to fish monoculture, and contribute to increase the farmer's income by about $1,200 per hectare compared to rice monoculture. It helped to reduce wheat biomass, therefore the use of chemical fertilizer for wheat control. It helped to reduce insect and also mosquito larvae density. It also contributes to increase nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and carbon sequestration in soil. These are very important ecosystem services that it provides. Another approach developed by AfricaRice and partners is the biochar. Biochar is actually a carbon-rich material that is obtained from the pyrolysis of organic matter, could be, for instance, rice residue or other crop residue. and is now increasingly being requested by farmers, particularly in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa. The use of biochar contributes to increase rice yield by 10 to 20% and the farmer's income by 28% in Cote d'Ivoire, where it has been used by farmers. It contributes to increase the soil organic carbon by 20 to 50% and the soil carbon sequestration by 1 to 2 ton CO2 equivalent per hectare per year. It's also reduced greenhouse gas emission by 20 to 36% and reduce nutrient leaching by 30 to 50%. So these are very important role that the use of biochar provide, not only in terms of increasing crop yield, but also in terms of improving soil organic carbon, soil carbon sequestration, reducing greenhouse gas emission, and nutrient leaching. Another approach is alternate wetting and drying. Is an important solution, particularly for farmers that are affected by water scarcity. And as we know, water scarcity is a major constraint for more than 80% of farmers in irrigated lowland and Saharan countries. Alternate wetting and drying is actually a water management strategy that consists of periodically drying the fields between irrigation events. It reduced the water use in rice cultivation by 90%, increased water productivity by 24%, and maintain yields in countries like Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, Mali, Burkina Faso, where it has been largely used by farmers. It also contributes to reducing greenhouse gas emission by 57% when we evaluated the potential of AWD for greenhouse gas emission mitigation in Cote d'Ivoire. Another innovation is Rice Advice digital application. Rice Advice is an important innovation which contributes to enhance nutrient uptake in agricultural lands. And as we know, more than 90% of agricultural land in Africa are characterized by negative nutrient balance. So Rice Advice, being a digital application for location-specific fertilizer, help actually to provide farmers with the recommendation of fertilizer that are based on the characteristic of his soil, but also on the climatic condition, to be able actually to enhance the rice response to the applied fertilizer. It improved yield by more than 1 ton per hectare and the farmer's income by about 370 US dollar per hectare, and is now adopted by more than 200,000 farmers in more than 10 African countries. Something that is very important with the use of Rice Advice is that it reduces the quantity of fertilizer that the farmers apply while enhancing the yield. It's also reduced greenhouse gas emission from rice cultivation by an estimated 35 kilograms CO2 equivalent per hectare. Among the practices for lowland restoration, stress-tolerant varieties are also something that's very important to mention. And AfricaRice and its partners have played a critical role in developing varieties that are tolerant to drought, varieties that are tolerant to flooding, but also varieties that are tolerant to salinity, iron toxicity. And some examples of those varieties are mentioned there. For instance, Arica 3, Kafasi 1, Wita 9, which actually have at least 20% yield increase in drought condition. We have submergent tolerant varieties, like Nerica L90 sub 1, Wita 4 sub 1, that contribute to increase yield by 1.1 to 4.5 ton per hectare in flooding condition. We have varieties that are tolerant to salinity, particularly Arica 11 Isri, with a yield advantage of 1 to 3 ton per hectare in salinity affected condition. These are very important information because we know that salinity, for instance, is becoming a major issue due to climate change in most of the coastal countries. Farmer-managed natural regeneration is also another innovation. Is now adopted by more than 100,000. It is adopted by over 100,000 hectares, particularly in semi-arid West Africa. It's a local practices where farmers protect and manage natural regrowth of trees and shrubs. And the use of farmer-managed natural regeneration has contributed to increase crop yield by 15 to 30%, income by 56 to 250 US dollar per hectare, largely adopted in countries like Niger, Mali, and other countries where actually Sahelian conditions actually prevail. It contributes to increase soil organic carbon by 98% and food security by 73%. Something that is important, particularly in the case of this event, is that it increased the tree cover more than triple compared to the farmers' practice. Climate Smart Village, all the innovations that I presented are individual innovation. The climate smart village approach helps actually to combine several innovation in a given environment in order to enhance the synergy between the different innovation. For instance, in our environment, smart valleys, integrated rice fish, and rice advice could be all actually provided to farmers for farmers to be able to have access to all this innovation and maximize the impact. The use of climate smart village also play a very much critical role because it contributes to scaling out, but also to scaling up innovation. Scaling out by enhancing the number of people who have access to the innovation, but scaling up also by making use of multi-stakeholder innovation platforms where innovation and lesson learned at the local level are actually translated at the district level and at the national level, contributing to policy change. But as we know, all these innovations have been developed by CGIAR partners, national partners, and other research partners. But we also agree that the level of adoption of this innovation is relatively low. And this is due to several challenges that include financial constraints, because some of these innovations require an initial high cost that are actually out of the reach of farmers. And then, as we know, farmers in Africa also have limited access to credit and financial support. Knowledge and awareness gap also play a critical role in terms of as a challenge because of the insufficient farmer training, limited access to extension services. Institutional and policy barriers are also part of the challenges due to weak enforcement of land use regulation and lack of incentive for adopting sustainable practices. Land tenure issues are also part of the major challenge, discouraging long-term investment and limited involvement of local communities. Most of the time, the lowland restoration practices are implemented without taking care of the objective of the local communities, without involving the local communities very well in the design and implementation. This is also one of the challenges. So we are ending this presentation with a roadmap to accelerate African lowland restoration that is based on three pillars. The first pillar is innovative partnership. The second pillar is inclusive approach. And the third pillar is policy and scaling. In terms of innovative partnership, it's extremely important that we leverage public and private collaboration to be able actually to take stock of the expertise, but also of the resource available, particularly with the private sector, that can play a critical role in funding some of the restoration efforts. Multi-stakeholder platforms are also one of the pillars that we propose, which help to facilitate knowledge exchange, but also to share goals. Sometimes within the community, we can have different goals that compete. Some farmers may be interested in land restoration and others may be interested in food security. So there is need to have this kind of platform to be able to have a common vision. There is a need also to strengthen links between research institutions and local communities so that there is a learning not only from the research institution, but also from the local community. And this plays a critical role in the second pillar that is related to inclusive approaches, making sure that we include the marginalized group in the design and implementation of land restoration techniques, that we align the objective of the land restoration with the local needs, and that we take advantage of the indigenous knowledge and we combine with scientific innovation. Policy and scaling are also very important. We need to foster a policy that incentivizes sustainable land management practices, to facilitate access to financial mechanisms for land restoration projects, but also to strengthen the capacity of farmers and to foster regional collaboration to accelerate lowland restoration. So in conclusion, lowland are vital for food security, ecosystem services, and rural livelihood in Africa. However, a large percentage of land in the region is degraded. And addressing degradation of lowland is critical, particularly for mitigating climate change, for sustaining biodiversity, but also for enhancing productivity and contributing to food security. Several innovations have been developed by AfricaRice, CGIAR partners, and also national partners that include lowland mapping and the suitability for rice, combined with innovation like smart valleys, integrated rice fish, biochar, stress-tolerant varieties, attenuating and dry agroforestry. And those innovations actually have demonstrated potential for restoring lowlands. However, financial constraints, knowledge gap, policy barriers, and land tenure issues are major constraints that need to be addressed for farmers to largely adopt the innovation. And we actually propose a roadmap for action that is based on innovative partnership, inclusive approaches, and policy and scaling mechanisms to be able to accelerate the lowland restoration in Africa. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Now the floor is now open for those who want to ask questions.
Yes, je vais m'exprimer en français. Je suis Véronique Niem, enseignante venue du Cameroun, toujours pour la lutte contre la désertification. Ce n'est pas une question en tant que telle, c'est déjà pour apprécier les recherches scientifiques que notre confrère a fait sur la question de comment rentabiliser les bas-fonds qui sont aujourd'hui en pleine dégradation. Alors, dans son programme, je me rends compte que certains pays d'Afrique de l'Ouest ont déjà implémenté son programme. Je voulais savoir si il est en train de faire des démarches aussi pour que le Cameroun, parce que nous avons la partie du nord du pays qui a également des bas-fonds et qui ces derniers temps est inondé. Est-ce que il est en contact peut-être avec le Cameroun pour proposer son programme? Voilà, c'était un peu ça ma préoccupation. Merci.
I don't know, may I also have to ask my question or okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Daniel. Daniel from Cameroon. Yes. I am environmentalist. Okay. For all.
Oh, yeah.
Ask my question.
Oh, you got
I'm not yet asking my question.
Just give it the name yet.
Okay, thank you. My question is this one. My friend explained so many ways of restoring lowland. And he also said that this restoration is for farmers. So, what do those farmers, let's say, do to capitalize this restoration? He has said there are so many organisms which bring, let's say, some techniques for restoration. Are farmers only there to adopt this restoration, or they are part of it? That's my question. Because when they are only part and they don't have any word to say, maybe, I don't know, something is going a bit wrong there. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you so much for this presentation. My name is Dr. Khaled Mood. I'm a researcher by profession, but I'm also a founder of a digital platform which works with smallholder farmers called Savi. Ecosystem Solution is based in the UK, working primarily in Asia and Africa, one country working in Pakistan, and we're also working in Nigeria as well. So my question is, especially you mentioned the AWD tubes that helps to reduce the water and also helps to reduce methane emissions. So I'm a farmer. I'm doing all these good practices. So how can I be my product be differentiated in the market? So where the market linkages are missing. So how to reward farmers for these regenerative agriculture practices or climate smart agriculture practices to get this business as a commercial opportunity rather than just one-off activity when there's only donor funding is available. Thank you.
Okay. I have a question. Okay. Okay, as you wish. Should I ask? Okay. Yeah, thank you very much for providing this opportunity. Myself, Dr. Shakil Ahmed, and I'm working as a consultant with the Seed Center of Saudi Arabia. So, my question is how the opportunity crops can help lowland restoration and what those crops are particularly with respect to Africa. Thank you very much.
The last part of the question.
Yeah, okay. What could you not understand it? So, my question was okay. So, what are the opportunity crops that could help Africa, particularly, in restoring the land and achieving sustainable development goals? You know. So, thank you very much.
Come back later.
Uh, thank you so much for this great comment and these great questions. I'll try to respond. I may not have, I will say, answers or exact answers to all, but based on the work that we are doing with partners, then I will provide some insights. Mrs. Veronique asked a question about, uh, let's say, the research that we are conducting with institution based in Cameroon. Yeah, based in Cameroon. And in the slide actually for some of the innovation, I didn't list all the countries. I mentioned, for instance, 10 West and Central African countries, and Cameroon is among them. We have close collaboration with the National Research Institute in Cameroon, but also with the universities in actually integrating some of this innovation in the curriculum that are developed. Yeah. Mr. Daniel asked a very important question that is related to the role of farmers in the design, validation, and implementation of the innovation. Whether we consider farmers as adopters or if we think farmers are also like part of the innovation development. And something that have been actually missing in making some of the land restoration techniques successful is that sometimes they are developed with limited involvement of farmers. And they don't match always with the local needs, with the local goal. This is something that at AfricaRice we pay very much critical attention to. We make farmers an actor of innovation development. So they are involved in all the process from the initiation, from the identification of the ideas to the design, the validation, the implementation, but also to identify the appropriate model for scaling. That's the reason why we ended the presentation by saying that accelerating lowland restoration in Africa has to be based on three pillars. The first one is innovative partnership. The second one is inclusive approaches. Inclusive approaches mean that farmers need to be part of the development and implementation, and we need to consider them as agents of development, not as users. And the last one has to do with policy and scaling. So farmers play a very much critical role in the development of the innovation. Mr. Alec actually made a comment about alternative wetting and dry, particularly the use of alternative wetting, the use of the field tube that contribute to reducing greenhouse gas emission, particularly methane. I want us to have actually a reflection with the market linkages. The market linkages can come in from two perspectives. The first one has to do with the production and the quality of the production. Given that AWD contributes For instance, in Cote d'Ivoire, it has enhanced the yields, rice yield compared to the farmers' practices. Because the farmers' practices usually lead to rice crop affected by drought sometimes, by water scarcity sometimes, but with the use of AWD, this effect of water scarcity on the crop has been actually alleviated. In some lowland in Cote d'Ivoire and also in Mali, iron toxicity is a major issue for rice cultivation. But with the use of AWD, we realize that the impact of iron toxicity on rice cultivation has been largely reduced. And therefore, it contributes to increased yield in the lowland that are affected by iron toxicity. In terms of grain quality, AWD also contribute to reducing the concentration of some of the heavy metals in the grain, for instance, arsenic. And so that's one angle. The second angle is also now linking farmers with the use of climate finances. The use of AWD, particularly reducing greenhouse gas emission, help the farmers who use this kind of technique to be eligible, for instance, to benefit from carbon credit and other climate finance mechanisms, and therefore to earn additional income to be able to invest in the production. So from these two angles, we can see the linkages between AWD and the market linkage. Mr. Marshall actually asked a very important question about the opportunity crops. And some of the opportunity crops that we actually consider or that our research actually reveal is, for instance, related to, I would say, the use of legume. The use of legume. We have cowpea, we have soya bean, we have mung bean, we have also some shrubs like stylosanthes, like mucuna, that play a very important role in terms of soil carbon sequestration, but also in terms of increase in food productivity through the biological fixation role that they play. So these are some of the indigenous crops that there are other wild vegetables or wild legumes that are produced in the lowlands that are naturally harvested in the lowland that we are now trying to domesticate because they have very important role in terms of nitrogen fixation, in terms of carbon sequestration. So this is also something that we are promoting, the integration of diversification options, focusing on the indigenous crops to be able to foster land restoration. And in a farmers managed land restoration technique, some of the species, like for instance, some like Senegalese species in general, have been shown actually to play a very much important role in terms of nitrogen fixation and carbon sequestration and improving the soil organic carbon. So these are very important avenues that we need to consider to have actually to be able actually to achieve both food security but also to preserve biodiversity and ecosystem services in the lowland. Thank you.
I just want to follow up. I mean, you may want to, in terms of farmer involvement, you may want to mention or say a little bit more about the smart valleys, how farmers are involved in the smart valleys. Second, in terms of the market linkage for rice, for the for this lowland for rice, the millers, the involvement of the millers in these things, and also the consumer preference surveys that they do in order to identify the variety that our farmers grows. Okay. So, other questions here? Do you have other questions? Please, so then you just say, and then okay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alio, for this very important follow-up question. The smart valleys approach is one of the best examples that we can consider to demonstrate farmers' involvement in lowland restoration. In fact, the smart valleys approach is a participatory approach where we leverage the farmers' knowledge in terms of the soil, vegetation, hydrology of the lowlands to be able to come with a development plan that help to improve water control. So farmers in the Smart Valleys approach development play a very much important role in terms of the information that we need to develop the land, to develop the lowland plan, but also to implement the lowland plan. So I would say that the Smart Valleys approach is one of the approach that is 100% based on farmers' knowledge. And that's what made the approach very sustainable because it helped to adapt the approach to the local context, I would say. In terms of markets, um, our colleagues, our particularly socioeconomics colleagues also, they conduct normally studies to identify the farmers and the consumer preference, particularly I would say the consumer and the miller's preference. And they use what the millers and consumer want as entry points to be able to identify the varieties that need to be promoted, but also to be able to guide breeders in the development of the varieties. In some countries in West Africa, for instance, the millers are interested in aromatic rice. So based on this information, the breeders at AfricaRice tend to make sure that some of the mega varieties that are developed also have this characteristic that millers want. Another important factor for the millers is the milling recovery. And some of and this information actually are actually captured in the development of the varieties and the promotion of the varieties to make sure that those varieties really meet the consumer preference, the miller's preference. Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? If not, I think we can give a big clap to Elliot, and then we end. Thank you very much for your interest in this. Yeah, picture, please. Okay, yes, please.